Hello YouTube. My name is Kevin Miles, and I'd like to post a response to Buzzmonkeys' question. He asked the question in response to a video from Bella. Is the act of noticing differences in and of itself an act of racism? And I think that is a very interesting philosophical question, and one that certainly deserves a response. And you know, to you, Buzz, I do want to mention that I can appreciate the concern that you expressed about the inability to have certain conversations in the public sphere now because of the weight attached to certain words. And while certainly I would agree with the weight that is extended to the use of the N-word, certainly to the degree that it stifles public conversation and the furtherance of understanding, it is something that merits our attention. But specifically to your question, is noticing differences an act of racism? And your question kind of stemmed from some comments that Bella had made, and while you know, Bella's conversation was Bella's conversation with Dario, and there was certainly too much there for me to want to go into or comment on at this time. I will say that the notion that one might notice bushy eyebrows while not noticing race certainly belongs in a hall of fame of sorts as one of the stupidest fucking comments I've ever heard in my life. If you can notice my eyebrows, certainly you notice me. But again, I digress. I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that noticing differences is any way analogous to being a racist. The two are not related. However, what would be racist in my view would be if one were to notice differences and then from there ascribe to the belief that those differences were somehow universally applicable to all people who shared those physical characteristics. If you were to say that all, you notice that on your college campus a lot of the black kids listen to hip-hop music. If you were to draw that analogy out and say black people like rap music, then that would be a prejudiced statement. But to notice those differences between people is not racist and should not be characterized as such. Unfortunately, we have arrived at a point in our discourse where race is such a hair-triggered issue that simply mentioning race in the public sphere is enough to generate those types of accusations, and that's true, I believe, from African Americans and from whites as well. We've certainly arrived at a point where we seem to be in the process of redefining what it means to be a racist. I am a civil rights activist, and that's something that I've done for a number of years, and it's something that I'm very proud of. However, in that work of trying to deal with real issues of institutional racism and discrimination and all of their manifestations, it has certainly become apparent to me that we are shifting the definition now to something that's actually silly. We've arrived at a point where anyone who discusses race is a racist. Anyone who deals with issues of racism is a racist. And because of that, we are arriving at a point where we can't have meaningful discussions about how we move forward. When you look at the presidential race, although we all know that race plays a part in it, it's funny to see the pundits and the talk show hosts trip over themselves to try to ascribe the issues to something other than what they are, and they're right there in front of us. But we can't say it out loud because to speak directly to the issue of race makes you racist. So I think that you're onto something. Certainly, I would not suggest that you walk up in front of a classroom spouting the N-word as you did at the beginning of your video. However, I do understand the point that you were trying to make, and certainly I ascribe no racism to the point that you were trying to make. However, I know that it would not be seen that way in the public sphere, just as you do as well. But it was a good question, and you know, I agree that we are definitely heading down a path of anti-intellectualism with regard to issues concerning the different racial groups here in America. We are dumbing down our speech to the point where you would think that the objective is for us to not notice anything, to at least to pretend as such. And it was certainly a point well taken when you notice that the people who never say that they don't see color tend to be people of color. You know, because whenever I hear someone say, "Oh, I don't see race, I just see people," certainly that raises a number of red flags for me, because that's just ridiculous. Of course people see it, you know, and when people feel the need to project themselves as somehow having overcome the obvious issues that we're all faced with, you know, it just sounds disingenuous. You know, the real issues of race and racism are largely institutional, and they're buried in a number of legislative items that don't merit our attention. I don't know if you just caught just a few days ago, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Wage Act was killed by a procedural act in the Senate. And basically what that did was, when the Civil Rights Act of '64 was passed, which was supposed to outlaw discrimination, the courts came in and ruled in the early 70s that, you know, if you were being paid a discriminatory wage, you had to file a suit within 180 days of the original discriminatory decision. Never mind the fact that at the time that you were hired, you would have no idea what your salary was in relationship to the other salaries of your co-workers. The Lilly Ledbetter Act would have said that every paycheck issued at a discriminatory rate would have been a separate act of discrimination, thereby bringing it back to the intent of the Civil Rights Act, but that was killed in the legislature with the use of a filibuster and cloture. And there are a number of issues that are very similar to that, like just racial discrimination cases, period. You know, there is a hierarchy of payment salaries, or a hierarchy of payout salaries for lawsuits, with race discrimination being the absolute lowest, followed by, just above that is age discrimination, above that is sexual harassment, and above that is retaliation. So if you were a young upstart law company and you were going to foray into the area of civil rights, certainly a race discrimination case is not one that you would be willing to try, because even if you were successful, the payout to your firm would be so low and so minimal that it really wouldn't be worth your while. So as an organization, I head an organization here. I'm the branch president of the Wichita NAACP. For us, when we're trying to pursue a racial discrimination case, we often have to try to tie it to a larger issue. We have to try to tie it to a case of retaliation, or we have to tie it to age discrimination, or something other than what it is, because the interpretations of the courts thus far have been to minimize the effect of the civil rights laws that have been passed. So those things still exist and still merit our attention. However, our discourse has been dumbed down so much that we are focused on distractions and, you know, tied up by these hair trigger comments, so that we can never really deal with the real issues because we're so worried about common speech. So again, I just wanted to say that I did appreciate your question, and I never comment on these videos, but I thought that the tone and tenor of your question was very earnest and looking for a real answer, so I just wanted to kind of chime in a little bit. All right, thanks, man.